Yeah, we'll wait for 5 more minutes, see if anyone else is joining. If not, we can start. So, Rajshri, how have you found the course so far?
It's quite interesting, madam.
Are you planning to take any other NPTEL course?
Next batch I'll take some more of this one on this only, ecology only, environment.
Yeah, I think there is another one on environmental science, and then if you are interested in ornithology, the next January we'll be having an ornithology basic course. And oh, you did that, but right?
Yeah, I did, madam.
Yeah,
I
you did
did.
that. Okay, fine. So yeah, you don't
Even
need to.
now I'm doing that basic course in ornithology from Bombay Natural History Society.
Oh, is
They
that
take us
course?
to field. They take
Okay.
us to field.
Oh,
It's
you're
of
doing the
1 year.
field course.
Yes,
Nice.
madam. 1 year full course is that.
I see. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, that will be good.
I'm also doing cyber security and privacy from this NPTEL. I don't
Okay.
know whether the exam date will clash or what.
Oh, I have no idea. Is it also a 12-week course?
Yes, madam, 12-week
Oh,
course.
okay, okay.
It is also on 28th October.
Okay.
If it is in a morning session and evening session, it's okay. Otherwise, I'll attend this wildlife ecology and I'll leave that.
Okay. Because the next session, no, the this exam is on the 27th, right? Not 28th.
28th, I
It's
think.
28th? Okay. Okay, I'm not sure. You would know better. Definitely. All right, I'm just going to leave the first question on the screen. Um, so you can have a look. Here we have uh, two types of growth curves. So basically, we'll try and answer these three questions. Comment on the per capita growth rate in the two figures. What is the limiting factor in the second graph? And give an example of an organism each that follows the particular growth pattern that is shown in the first two graphs. So you can take a minute to think about it. So, any ideas? So, what can you talk about the per capita growth rate? Okay, so let's talk about the first and the second graph. Any idea as to what type of growth curves are shown? What does it show? The first graph versus the second graph. What is the different? Okay, what are these? What is the type of growth pattern that is seen in the first graph? So, this goes back to lecture, I think, 3. So, does anyone remember J shaped curves and S shaped curves? Yeah, so Rajshri is saying exponential growth. Okay, that's correct. So, what is the per capita growth rate in an exponential growth curve?
Okay, okay, okay.
So, let's say as population size increases, what happens to the per capita growth rate?
Per capita growth rate.
Yeah. So basically it is r in the equation. If you remember, the growth equation is the growth equation is basically dn by dt is equal to r into n. Do you remember? Does anyone remember that? Rate of increase in population is equal to r into n. N is basically your population size and r is your per capita growth rate, right? So yeah, so your per capita growth rate doesn't change if population sizes get large, even in your J-shaped, your exponential growth curve. But your per capita growth rate decreases as your population increases towards a maximum limit in your logistic growth curve. So the logistic growth curve is shown below. That is this S-shaped curve, right? Let me get the marker. Oops, sorry. This here, right? So this is your exponential growth curve and this is your logistic growth curve. So what is the difference between these two graphs? What is like a limiting factor? It's shown in the graph. Yes, right, your carrying capacity, yeah, and your carrying capacity can basically be defined in various different ways, like Rajeshri has mentioned here, resource availability. What can be other factors? You can just put in different ideas. So one is availability of resources, then what else can be limiting factors to your carrying capacity?
Competition.
Sorry, Rajshri. Competition, yeah, sure. Competition, predators. Okay. Habitat size, right? So all these factors define the carrying capacity, and so the easiest way to understand this is to look for examples, right? So for an exponential growth curve, what is the classic book example that we use or that we have seen showing exponential growth? What's the classic textbook example for an exponential J-shaped growth curve? Microbes, right? Yeah, thanks, Nupur. So they are indeed microbes and your bacteria, right? When you have bacterial cultures and you put them into a broth and you keep on replenishing the broth or whatever the growth media is, your bacteria just exponentially grow in that particular culture, right? And then you have a population growth curve that looks like this. But what about a population growth curve that looks like the second half? Could you give an example of that? No idea? Any idea? You can just put in any example, it doesn't matter, we can discuss. Large mammals, right? Yeah, so technically any other organism, usually the larger they are, they will have some limiting factors that such as that contribute towards the carrying capacity of a particular organism in a particular environment, right? So yeah, I hope the idea of an exponential growth curve versus a logistic growth curve is clear. So we can move on to the next question. So yeah, so if you see here, these are the two equations. You have dn by dt is equal to r max, which is your growth rate, into n, which is a population size. And out here you have the same equation is dn by dt is equal to r max k minus n divided by k into n, and k out here is your, what is k?
Ring capacity.
Carrying capacity, right? Yeah, that's right. So carrying capacity has to feature in your equation when you are talking about a logistic growth curve. Alright, so avian flu is a density dependent factor to population growth rate of birds because it spreads less quickly in dense population. It is spread by contact. It results in more predation, or it spreads more quickly in dense populations. Okay, one answer we have in. So choose the most appropriate answer. Okay, we have mm, any other answers from others present? Any guesses? Okay, so Nupur and Rajeshri, yeah, you're correct. It spreads more quickly in dense populations. Alright, so let's move into the Lotka-Volterra model. I think all of you remember this. So basically, the Lotka-Volterra model looks at how prey and predator numbers oscillate with each other, how prey are always present in equal number than the predator, how prey numbers are dependent on predator numbers, or how predator numbers are dependent on prey numbers. Choose the correct options. Is it 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3, or 1, 3 and 4? Okay, Rajshi says 2 and 3. Nupur says D. Okay. So, okay. So, Rajshri and Nupur, why do you think it? So, Rajshri, why do you think it could be 2 and 3? And Nupur, why do you think it is 1, 3, and 4? So, does everyone remember the Lotka-Volterra model or the predator-prey cycles? Okay, so let's hold on to this and go to this slide. Would someone like to explain this slide to me in your own words? So here we have two populations of two species. You have the hare in the blue, and which is basically this creature out here, and you have the lynx, which is this species out here in the red. And what is this graph actually showing us? Any idea? You can feel free to explain it in your own words. You can type in your answers or speak out, whichever works. What is the okay? So what is this actually showing us? What is this graph showing us? Predator prey relationship, right? Exactly. And what is happening in this predator prey relationship? Which are in higher number as compared to the other? Prey population is more than the predator population. Yeah, right? And what else? What else is interesting? As predator numbers increase, what's happening to the prey numbers? So here we have a timeline, right? We have a timeline extending right from the 18, let's say 1848 to 19, almost yeah, the 1930s, right? So we have data from almost 100 years out here, and what this trend line is following, it's following predator and prey relationships. Here your predator is the lynx, the cat, and here you have the hare, which is this rabbit kind of thing out here, right? These snow horseshoe, these hares out here, right? So what's happening if we start with a larger predator population, the number of prey suddenly drops, right? Because all these predators want to eat prey, and then once the number of prey is less, you have your predator numbers just crashing, right? Your red line suddenly just drops, right? There are just about one or two predators left, actual individuals. Oh, sorry, 1,000 individuals in the population. And once your predator number drops, which are these cat lynx population, your prey numbers suddenly surge up, right? There's a huge increase in the number of hare in the population. And what happens when the number of prey increases? Your predators suddenly have found more food, and then their numbers also increase, right? And they increase to such an extent when they kill all the prey that is present, or kill a huge number of prey that are already present in the population, and then you have an again crash. So the number of prey in the population defines the number of predator present, and your number of predator present defines the number of prey present, right? So if we look at the previous slide, what do you think is the correct option? Do we feel that anything needs to be revised? So what's the correct answer? A, B, C, or D? So Rajshri said B, Nupur said D. Okay, so Rajshri says D. Alright, so yeah, so D is the correct answer. I hope this logic makes sense of the predator prey relationship seen in this Lotka Volterra model of these lynx and horseshoe hare populations. Alright, so let's jump into another discussion. So during the industrial revolution, I'm sure some of you might have heard of this, light colored peppered moths were abundant, right? So these are peppered moths, and they have two morphs. One is a light morph and one is a dark morph. So this is before the industrial revolution, right? So at that time these light colored morphs were more than the dark colored morphs, and after the industrial revolution, what happened is that the number of black colored moths increased and the number of white colored moths decreased. So, this case study is an example of what type of selection? Is it stabilizing selection? Is it disruptive selection? Or is it directional selection? Or really no selection is happening out here? Do you all remember types of selection? The three types of selection or even no selection. Any ideas? Okay, so I I think Rajshri says B and Nupur also says B. Disruptive selection? Are both of you saying it's disruptive selection? Okay, so what was disruptive selection? Does anyone remember what is disruptive selection? To the extreme traits. But what is actually happening out here in this? Do you see any change? So, when you talk about disruptive selection, you technically will have three types, right? You will have either uh, white, black, or gray, right? And it's going to choose your extreme ends. But what's happening here? Your the number of black moths are increasing and the number of white moths are decreasing, right? So which is more? Like white moths and black moths are not becoming equally present, right? There is no extremity in traits out here. So it's moving from one type to another type, right? So what happened during the industrial revolution? Any idea? So during the industrial revolution there was a lot of industrialization, there were a lot of industrial activities that led to the formation of, a lot of pollution and soot and smoke in the environment, right? Pollution. So what happened because of the presence of pollution? What happened due to pollution? So what factor in pollution led to the black moths increasing? The trees were covered with soot, correct? And what happens to the black moths? The white moths became more susceptible to predators. Yeah, that's correct, right? So in your previous background where you had like a bark of a tree or something like that, your white colored moths were not visible and your black colored moths really stood out. But post the industrial revolution, when the entire area was covered with soot, your black colored moths were camouflaged, right? And your white colored moths were more visible, so they got highly predated upon, right? Yeah, so no, it's not stabilizing selection. What is stabilizing selection? So here there is a movement, right? So stabilizing selection is when your No, gradual change from one gene specific trait to another, not really. So you'll have like a normal distribution, and it'll become even more compacted towards the mean, right? That's what is happening in stabilization. No, it will not go laterally. Okay, so Shana, you're actually explaining directional selection, which this is actually, right? So directional selection is where it has a particular kind of morph. Actually, I should have put a graph of it. And instead of that morph, it's shifting to another morph. So it's moving in one direction. So it's called directional selection, not stabilizing selection. Yeah, what you have explained is correct, but the term is wrong. So Janvi says moderate species have more advantage. That is what is stabilizing selection. But out here you have directional selection. It's moving completely from a white morph to a black morph, right? Okay, so I hope that's clear. If that makes sense, yeah. All right. Let's move on. So, off the mainland coast of India, there are two islands, A and B. Okay, just two islands. Given that A is closer to India than B, A would have fewer species than B, higher rate of immigration than B, lower rate of immigration than B, or lower rate of extinction than B. So, keep in mind you have been given this much data. What inferences can you draw, and what would be the most appropriate answer? Shane says B, Rajshri says D, Nupur says B. Okay, Janvi, what about you? What do you feel? Do assignment questions revision help in the actual test? Yeah, I'm sure they do. I think everything does. So the idea is not to worry about your exam and your exam marks, but it's to conceptually understand what is being taught. Of course, yes, it's great that all of you, if you're giving the exam, it's great. But the idea is to, so I think solving questions would just help you understand concepts better. So take them as not like a test, but a way to increase your understanding for particular concepts. And then if you feel that you have some doubts in particular concepts, these assignments actually help you identify that, and you can go back to the lectures and then read up a little more and then try and re-answer them. Okay, so Janvi says C. Alright, so if we go back to the question, so what does immigration mean? What is immigration?
Influx of new species influx of species from one island to another.
Right, correct. That's absolutely right, Nupur. Thanks. So basically, given the data that you have been presented with right now, the most appropriate answer is actually B. So all those who selected B, you're right. So you'll have a higher rate of immigration. Wait. You'll have a higher, no, wait. Lower rate of yeah, A would have a higher rate of immigration than B because A is closer to the mainland, right? So the fact that distance plays an important role in immigration, closer the island, larger the chances of individuals reaching that island, right? So B is the correct answer out here. We can't comment about extinction here. Why can't we comment about extinction? I mean, there are a lot of factors, right? So, what is the island theory of island biogeography tell us? What are the important factors or the important concepts that are involved in the theory of island biogeography?
Immigration and extinction, madam. An island,
Immigration.
hmm,
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
an island near to the mainland
Mm-hmm.
has a more immigration and lower chances of extinction of the species
Okay.
than the island which is far away from mainland.
Okay. And what is another important concept that we look at in the theory of island biogeography apart from distance?
Abundance of species.
Okay. What else?
The size of island, means island which have more resources.
Right?
Yes.
So your
Yes.
size of island is really important, right? So
Yes.
unless you know the size of the island, you can't really make any additional inferences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So size of the
Yes.
island is quite important. So if we go to the next slide, so you can see this clearly, right? So this shows us the theory of island biogeography, where you have the number of species on the x-axis and the rate of colonization or extinction, which is basically immigration or emigration, not really immigration or emigration. Colonization means the number of individuals that are inhabiting an island that are increasing, colonization, and extinction means death. Then you have remote islands which are far away, and then you have close islands, right? You have both the types that covers the distance, and then you have small islands, and then you have large islands, right? So the most number of species will reside in your large close islands. Can you see where these two solid lines intersect? If I drop a line down to the x-axis out here, if you follow my cursor, this shows the most number of species that will be there. So large, if you go to the figure out here, large close islands will have the most number of species on it, while the least number of species will be on your remote small islands, right? Small islands that are really far away will have the least number of species, right? So if you look at this figure out here, the bars out here depict the number of species found on it, right? And depending upon island area, if island area increases, the number of species definitely inhabiting it increase. But if your distance from mainland increases, the number of species inhabiting that also increases or decreases. As distance from mainland increases, number of species increases or decreases.
Decreases.
Decreases, right? Yeah, that's right. All right, I hope this concept of island biogeography is clear to all of you, because it's a very important concept, and though there have been a huge number of improvements and modifications to this theory, um, this core concept continues to, hold true. All right, let's move on to the next question. So let's talk about pyramids, ecological pyramids out here. So the marine pyramid of biomass is generally bell-shaped, upright, rectangular, or inverted. Okay. So we're talking about pyramid of biomass. upright. Upur says inverted. Rajshri says upright. Okay. So, if you remember your concepts of ecological pyramids, do you remember which type of pyramid is always upright? Any idea which pyramid is always upright? No one remembers? Which pyramid is, what are the different types of ecological pyramids? So you have one that's shown out here, pyramid of biomass. Oh, okay. Then what else do you have? Pyramid of numbers, right? And what's the other pyramid that you have? Don't worry about being right or wrong. You can just throw in your answers. Nobody remembers? Okay, it's good that we are doing revision quite early then. So, which, as we go up the trophic levels, what is a factor that always decreases? Does anyone remember? Something that always decreases as we move up the trophic level. Nobody remembers energy, pyramid of energy? Yes, no? Do you guys remember? Is this new? Pyramid of energy, is this new? Is this a new concept?
No, madam.
It's not, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's always upright, right? Pyramid of energy.
Apex predators is in the apex this one portion. Tertiary consumers.
Yeah. So they are right on top, but energy sequestered by the sun is the most by plants, right? At the bottom.
Yes.
So that's the highest amount of energy. So how much
Right.
energy is actually transferred from one trophic level to another? How much percentage of energy? We discussed this during one of the sessions as well.
10%.
Yeah.
10% is lost.
No. 10%. 10% is transferred, right? 90% of your energy is lost from one trophic level to another trophic level, right? So your pyramid of energy is always upright because on the top you have the least energy. That's why you have to consume more amount of food if you are an apex predator to acquire that much of energy, right? But the marine pyramid of biomass, so what do you have in your marine pyramid of, we are talking about pyramid of biomass.
Inverted, madam.
It's inverted, right? Why is it inverted? Could you give me examples? think of the organisms occupying different stages of the trophic level, right? So what occupies the bottommost level in your marine pyramid of biomass? What's the
It's
primary?
plankton.
Plankton, right? Plankton is abundant, but the biomass. And what is on the topmost? What is your topmost apex or topmost organism in your marine environment?
The large map,
Yeah,
large
yeah,
predator,
yeah, large.
whales, and
Yeah, exactly, right? So you have your whales, you have your sharks, you have your uh, very large cetaceans, etc. So the compiled biomass of all these large mammals is much higher than your phytoplankton put together, right? So your pyramid of biomass is generally inverted for a marine ecosystem. Does it make sense? Yeah, yes, no?
yes, yes.
Alright, let's move on to the next question. So, a type of parasitism that doesn't involve consuming the host is called as ectoparasitism, brood parasitism, endoparasitism, or parasitoidism. Okay, Nupur says B. Janvi says B. Rajshri says B. So, what really is brood parasitism here? Does anyone remember what is brood parasitism?
Uh, one or mammal, this bird lays its eggs in another bird's nest, like cuckoo families.
Yeah, cuckoo family. You're correct. Where do they lay their eggs?
In the nest of crows.
In the nest of crows, right? Yeah. So that's an important example, especially like the Asian coil, which is found like in India. They lay their eggs in the house crow nests, right? So that's called brood parasitism. What about ectoparasitism and endoparasitism? What's the difference between the two?
The parasite is outside of the host in ectoparasitism.
Yeah.
In the endoparasitism, like the eggs are inside the larva. Means some insects lay their eggs inside the caterpillar's body, and when the eggs, the larvae hatch, they eat the caterpillar from inside. The caterpillar of butterflies.
Okay. So
Yes,
what are,
ma'am.
yeah. So you're correct. And what else? So that actually is called parasitoidism, right? So they lay their eggs inside another organism, and the other organism grows inside this host organism and eats it from inside. But what is an a common example of another endoparasite?
Worms living on the body of hosts.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So you have all your tapeworm, nematodes, etc. All these fall under endoparasites. And then even things like malaria, right? Malaria have parasites that are transmitted from by vectors, but they are endoparasites, right? The transmission is internal. I mean, it needs to get into your body. Okay, all right. Let's move into conservation. So, which of the following is incorrect for ex situ conservation, right? So, you all remember in situ and ex situ conservation. So, in ex situ conservation, species are conserved outside their natural habitat. Then conservation choice when species are under they are the conservation choice when species are under severe threat. They involve human beings being heavily involved in it, and they ensure the sustainability of the environment or the ecosystem. So which of the following is incorrect? Okay, so let's break it down into the first type. So, species conserved outside their natural habitat. What kind of conservation is that? Ex situ or in situ? Ex situ, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is the conservation choice when your species are under severe threat?
It is ex situ.
Ex situ. Okay, so everybody agrees it is ex situ. So, what involves the heavy involvement of human beings? Which type of conservation? Which type of conservation? Ex situ, right?
Both ex situ. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Ex situ.
Okay, why both? Why do you feel both?
Even though we have to conserve animals in situ, it also requires human beings further involvement.
Yeah, so actually, when you talk about in situ conservation, they usually cordon off an entire area, and the habitat is allowed to, sustain naturally. There is no feeding or, supplementation or manual control of any population sizes in it. But while in situ conservation, like for example, you have, give me an example of in situ conservation.
National parks.
National parks.
Yeah, in situ conservation. Yeah, exactly. In situ conservation, you have national parks, etc., where you have. I'm sorry if I talked about this wrong, but yeah, in situ conservation, when you cordon off a large area and you don't interfere with the monitoring of the populations in terms of their population size or population number. You're not manually feeding them, you're not controlling anything, you're letting the ecosystem sustain by itself by just protecting that entire area from any human interference, basically, right? So you don't allow poaching, for example, in that area. But in terms of ex situ conservation, what is an example of ex situ conservation?
Museums and sanctuaries.
Captive breeding programs.
Yeah, so you have your zoological parks, your botanical parks, captive breeding programs, etc. So that's all in situ conservation. Especially, like for example, if you take captive breeding programs, humans are so heavily involved, right? They are involved to make sure that your sperms and eggs are fertilized, and the fertilized zygotes are incorporated in an individual that is receptive and can, reproduce as well as produce offspring of that particular species. That is in your captive breeding program, and they mate individuals that are particular crosses to ensure that there are viable offspring of good genetic quality, right? So there is a lot of human involvement in situ type of in ex situ type of conservation. right? So your option D, ensures the sustainability of the environment and the ecosystem, actually is an in situ conservation type, and it is incorrect for ex situ. So that should be your correct answer. All right, hope that is clear. So look at the diagram alongside, and out here you have an example of a pitfall trap, right? So pitfall traps are shown in the illustration, are a method to measure dash population density, and if you could give an explanation of why this is so, that would be great. So when we talk about sampling techniques, there are various kinds of sampling techniques, right? What are the type of amphibians? Okay. What are the type of sampling techniques that you are aware of? There are several types.
Systematic sampling, stratified sampling,
Okay.
random sampling.
Okay. Systematic sampling, stratified sampling, random sampling. What are the other methods in which you can do sampling?
Point transacts and
Yeah.
line transacts.
Yeah.
Line sec.
Correct. So you can do point counts, you can do line transects, you can do grid based sampling, right, where you put a grid especially to map, like for example vegetation in a small area, or if you want to measure something in these marine tidal zones, you can use some grid sampling techniques, right? So pitfall traps. So Nupur says amphibians. Any other guesses as to what pitfall traps can be used to measure, or what to sample what type of organism? So what is a pitfall trap? It's basically an inverted bottle that has a particular kind of solution at the bottom which attracts your target creature, right? And you can have pitfall traps in the ground, which is illustrated out here. You can set up pitfall traps like you can see in this bottle out here that is attached to a tree, and this is a picture from the canopy. So you can have pitfall traps in different places, right? So what do you think these pitfall traps are used to catch? Okay. Yeah, insects, right? They used to catch insects, arthropods, etc. Yeah, I don't think you will have amphibians getting attracted to pitfall traps that much, but it's broadly to attract insects. I mean, you might have other things that are also just falling in, but if you see maybe you'll have small amphibians that can get into it, but it's mainly to catch insects. So you will have um, something like a fruity or a sugar solution that is usually put at the bottom of this, and this is for insect sampling or arthropod sampling. All right, so let's move on to a little bit of stats. A statistical measure of the relative dispersion of data points in a data series around the mean is called coefficient of variation, standard deviation, standard error, or weighted mean. Any guesses? Coefficient of variation, standard deviation, standard error, or weighted mean. Measure of relative dispersion of data points in a data series. Okay. We have two answers in. Okay, yeah. So I think everyone's gotten the right answer. It's standard deviation. Can move on to the next question. So, which of the following species listed out here need to be additionally marked to estimate population size via the mark and recapture method? Do you remember the mark and recapture method to estimate like population sizes? So you have jaguars, humpback whales, meerkats, Malabar giant squirrels, or Bengal tiger. Which species amongst all of these listed species need to be additionally marked? Okay. Ranvi says humpback whale. Others, what do you feel? So, which of these species have unique identifications on them? Any idea? Which of the following species have unique identifications? Okay, tiger, yeah, that's correct. What else? Humpback whales also have unique identifications, that's correct. What about jaguars? They can also be identified, right? So so the species that don't have unique identification marks on their coat or on their skin are your meerkats and your giant squirrels, right? So if we were to do mark and recapture of these two species, we would have to catch and mark them with some colored paint or some numbers, right? I hope that's clear. If you are not sure of the species, it might be worth just googling their images also and seeing. Alright, so the impact of humans on the environment is driven by which of the following most appropriate options? Is it population? Is it population and technology? Is it population and GDP? Is it population, GDP, and technology? Okay, Janvi says D. Rajri says D. What else? Anyone else? Okay, everyone. Okay, all three of you say D. Yeah, that's the correct answer. And indeed, if you remember this formula, the total impact on the environment is dependent upon population, which is basically number of like humans, your affluence, which defines your gross domestic product, and technology. All right, that's great that that's clear. Okay, so moving on to maximum sustainable yield. Maximum sustainable yield is the minimum amount of catch that you can take from a fishery, the maximum level at which natural resource can be routinely exploited without long-term depletion, the amount of fish that can be caught in the shortest amount of time, or the point fisheries management used to determine quotas. Okay. Rajya and Nupur say B. Janvi says B. Okay. So yeah, all three of you have gotten the right answer. It's a maximum level at which a natural resource can be exploited without long-term depletion. And if you remember, there are these optimal yield points which actually determine your maximum sustainable yield. So it's great that all of you have understood that concept. Okay, so let's get out the pen and papers and try and solve this numerical. So basically, you are growing a high value crop in your field, but one day you see several rats in one patch. Before this becomes a problem, you want to first estimate the population of rats in your area, right? You get a pest control technician to capture and apply numbered pink ear tags to 31 rats, which are then released. A week later, the technician receives and returns and traps 36 rats. 9 of them have ear tags. So, what is the total estimate of your population of rats in your field? So if you remember, what will you use to arrive at your answer? Which formula will you use? Does anyone remember what what will you use to figure this out?
Pn plus 1 is equal to Pn plus natality and immigration and mortality and immigration.
No, not that. That is to estimate population size, right? When you have these particular factors in it. But what is given out here? You are estimating the population size of one particular species, and you have caught 31 of them, which are then tagged. That should give you a clue. And then a week later, you are doing another session where you are trapping, and you have caught 36 individuals, from which only 9 of them have tags. So do you know what kind of sampling is done like this to estimate population size?
Mark, capture, recapture.
Yeah, mark and recapture, right? Yeah, you're correct, Nupur. So do you remember the formula of mark and recapture? Do you remember the formula of mark and recapture?
The number of animals
Uh-huh.
upon the total population. The number of animals marked upon the total population.
Okay.
If they into which is equal to the second time the number of animals who are captured upon sorry, divided by the total number of animals which are captured.
Okay. So if you put that formula in place, what is the answer that you get?
124.
124. Others, what are you getting? Are you getting the same answer as Nupur? Are anybody getting different answers? Any other answers? Nupur, would you like to explain your equation to everyone? What you did to arrive at 124?
It was sorry, 31 divided by the total population is equal to 9 divided by 36.
Okay. Oops, my line has gotten down. Yeah.
So we have 31 into 9. Sorry,
No.
31 into 4. The equation.
Yeah. So you have your number of animals initially marked and received, which is 31, divided by the marked individuals caught, which is 36, into 9, right? Marked individuals caught is 9, sorry. You have 31 divided by 9 into 36. That will give you 124. My line in this equation is kind of like down. If I just put this up. Oops. 1 second. Yeah. Hope this makes sense. Oops. Yeah. Right? So animals initially marked and released were 31, and the if you put estimated population size on your right hand side, then you'll have total number of individuals caught in the second round, which is 36, divided by the marked individuals caught, which is 9. That gives you 124. Is this okay with everyone? Well, I hope you understood this. Okay, so humans follow which type of survivorship curve? Is it type 1, is it type 2, is it type 3, or is it none of the above? Okay, Hershey says type 3. What do others feel? Humans follow which type of survivorship curve? Okay, so you actually have humans following the type 1 survivorship curve because you have a very large number of people surviving for a very long period of time, right? And what follows a type 3 survivorship curve? Can you think of something that okay, plants. If we were to stick to the animal kingdom, any examples of animals? Hmm. Mushroom, insects. Yeah, so insects follow a type 3 survivorship curve. Yeah, that's right. Right, even if you look at your turtles, etc., if you see that a large number of them might hatch, but a very small number of them actually reach maturity and continue to survive till old age, right? So, hope that's clear. So, the phenomenon of using a predator for controlling a pest is known as artificial control, biological control, confusion technique, or genetic engineering. Okay. Okay, Nupur says B. Yeah, that's just a made up example. Great question. Alright, so it's biological control, okay? So I think in the previous class also we have been discussing different ways of biological control where in some cases you use predators to deplete certain number of uh, pest species in a particular area for, like, for example, to control crops. And even there are like pheromones that have been used, like I said, Karan to Janvi, as she just asked right now, I've just put in a random thing. It does not exist. I hope that's clear. It does not exist, this technique, so no need to worry about it. Alright, so if you look at the map out here, what do you think is a species that is described in this small area? Can anyone tell me what is the species that we are looking at in this map? Yeah, excellent. We're looking at Asiatic lions. So, would you like to tell me a little bit more about Asiatic lions? So what is the distribution of these Asiatic lions? What is the distribution of these Asiatic lions?
In India, they are only found in the Gir sanctuary.
Okay. Where else are they found? Are they found anywhere else?
They are a highly threatened species.
Yeah, highly threatened species. So they are only found in a very small area, right? In India, the Asiatic lion. It's found only in Gir, in the state of Gujarat, and yeah, in Saurashtra. So, what do you think is the genetic diversity of this species? What do you think is the genetic diversity of the species that is shown here? Do you think it's going to have a high genetic diversity, low genetic diversity? Okay, Janvi says low. Why do you think? Okay, Nupur also says low. Why do you think it has a low genetic diversity? They are small number. Okay, they're not actually that small in number, I think, but yeah, relatively they have a small population size. What? So we all agree that they have a very low genetic diversity, right? Because why is there a low genetic diversity? They don't occur anywhere. Okay, everywhere. Okay. What else? What leads limited varieties of alleles? Okay. So what happens when your population size is small and your distribution is also small?
There are chances of inbreeding also.
Right? So there are chances of inbreeding. Absolutely correct. So what really is inbreeding?
When the type is the same, there is no relative effect. I mean, the genetic pool is very small, and the members of the same family they breed with each other.
Right. Yeah, that's correct. So that leads to loss in genetic diversity, right? As you correctly explained. Yeah, so when this loss of genetic diversity happens, it's very difficult to, sustain populations at such low numbers. Right? It's very important to, yeah, they also have a very low chance of survival. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Okay. So, can you give me an example of a species that has a very high genetic diversity in India? Think of some species that is found everywhere. Let's talk about mammals only, since we're talking about mammals out here. Okay, so tigers are found over a larger area in India. That's I'm happy that you brought out this point. But tigers are also having isolated populations, right? So yeah, Karan, we are only talking about mammals out here, not about birds. So Yeah, so tigers definitely might have more genetic diversity when pooled together, but because of these isolated populations, each of these isolated populations form specific genetic signatures in them. Okay, so so I hope that is clear. The cattle, also another thing about cattle is they are domesticated and they have different breeds. So just like dogs have different breeds, you have also cattle that have different breeds. So cattle that you probably see in the south and is not the same as cattle that you see in the east and the west, right? They are heavily selected for due to human intervention. Could you think of yeah, dogs also exactly the same. Leopards, okay, yeah, so leopards are probably large cats that might have a larger genetic diversity. Could you think of other large mammals, something that is literally not even large mammal, any like mammal that is found literally everywhere you've seen? So you have cheetal, right? Cheetal, spotted deer. Spotted deer are found abundantly everywhere, all over the country, and they don't really have any particular, you know, um, isolated populations as such. So the yeah, we're not talking about humans either here. Uh, we are talking about like animals in the natural kingdom. So yeah, if you take the example of spotted deer, and if you take the example of your macaques or rhesus macaques, right, they're distributed over a large area and they have a high degree of connectivity, so their genetic diversity will be high or low. High, right? Okay, cool. I hope all of you have gotten that point. All right, so let's move on to one of our last slide for the day. So you have on the right a representation of species from two different communities, A and B. So what is the difference between species richness in community A and community B? What is species richness? What is species richness? Community ecology. So what is, can you give me the definition of species richness? Okay, let's first break it down. What is species richness? Number of species in a community, right? So is there any difference in the number of species in community A versus number of species in community B? No, right? There's no difference between number of species in community A and B. They have equal number of species, but what is the difference between the species diversity? Which has a higher species diversity? Why does that have higher species diversity? B. Which has higher species evenness? Different species are equally divided. Which has higher species evenness? B, right? Because there are equal number of individuals per species in community B as compared to community A, right? So that's why species evenness is greater in community B, and species richness, even though species richness is same in both, species evenness and species diversity is greater in community B. What could be the possible reasons as to such discrepancy in the communities in these two examples? This is like an open question. What do you think could be the possible reasons? It's really an open question. It's just for discussion. A is concentrated in O type species, B has good mix of all, A has more resources for one type of, yeah, okay. So as Nupur's rightly mentioned, this could be one of the possible reasons, right? Community A might have more resources for one type of species. What does that if we were to take this, what does that make you believe about the species in the communities? Okay, predator and prey is a little bit difficult to gauge in this, but if we were to go on what Nupur mentioned, A has more resources for absence. Okay, absence of predator in A. But what if the predator eats all the species? High nutrition for O type species. Yeah. So exactly what I was trying to get at. You have resource availability for one type of species more in habitat A as compared to the other species. But what does that tell you about these different species? It tells you that they have different dietary requirements, right? They don't consume the same resource type. So if they have resource niche partitioning and one type of resource is more abundant than the other type of resource, naturally you will have one type of species more abundant than the other type of species, right? So this was literally just to have a discussion on this. All right, I hope that is clear to everyone, and I think that these are all the questions that I have for all of you. I hope this has been informative, and I hope this revision helps. If you have any additional questions, it might be worth putting them on the discussion forum so that the next lectures could probably cover them for you, the next tutorials. So I hope you've had a good time learning and participating in this wildlife ecology course, and good luck for your exams. Yes, I do upload these videos, so all videos are uploaded on my YouTube channel and you can access them there. So if you search my name and YouTube, you should probably be able to get it. Yeah. So alright, nice to have interacted with all of you during this course, and good luck for the exams. Wishing you all the very best if you are giving them. And yeah, hope your interest in ecology continues. Thanks for joining in. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.